Abdul Aziz and I, again, like Lou and others, have traveled the world together, have been in many countries. Some of you who were at a reception the other day, I would like to repeat a story because I found it so striking. I frankly got a little tired of it's sort of like, you know, being somebody that nobody knows, but they know the person with you, you know. So you sort of go somewhere and they'd say, oh, Professor Said, you know. I'm the president, you know, sort of. Over here, that sort of thing. And then I said, well, okay, I'm humble enough. I can take that. I can live with that. But now I can travel by myself, as a matter of fact, and I can go to places. But I still get off the plane, you know, in Cairo or London or Qatar, for God's sake, or someplace, and they say, do you know Professor Said? So this was okay. I'm getting used to this, you know. I go around and I realize now that if I say American University, somebody's going to say, do you know Professor Said? So I was sort of used to it, and I figure, okay, it's the big places. You know, if you go to London, or if you go to Beijing, or if you go to Cairo, or something, you can kind of expect that. But I found a place. I found a place in the mountains of Georgia. Habersham County, right? Habersham County. And I went to Habersham County and went up into the mountains. And you can get lost in the mountains of Habersham County, Georgia. But I didn't get lost. I stopped and met someone there who said, American University, do you know Professor Abdul Aziz Said? And I've mentioned this to him. He knows who I'm talking about. So I've sort of given up. I think that's a wonderful thing, that someone has become so identified with the institution and so identified with the School of International Service that in some ways the history of the school, the history of the university, is closely intertwined in ways that people want to know, is that person, is that value, is that level of teaching and research still a part of what makes American university so rich? And the answer, of course, is yes. It's not my role to introduce Professor Said right now, and many other things can be and will be said. You know that he is really the person behind the peace and conflict resolution, who has pioneered some key concepts and activities that other people learn from around the country and are now implementing, whether in regard to settling international and national issues, the Middle East, for example, or in the local school system here in Project Penn, where several hundred students have now been involved in his leadership in training young people in the art of peace and conflict resolution. Or whether we now regard him as a distinguished holder of a chair of Islamic peace, and the whole idea of being able to say Islam and peace in the West is something that is itself an educational venture. And his ability to frame the issues of peace within the context of the volatile issues that surround the Middle East peace process and the Western assumptions and prejudices against certain extremists in Islam, and bring together a new understanding of the roots of that tradition as they bear on our understanding of a global community. It's quite remarkable. We know him as a wonderful teacher. We know him as someone who has long ago wedded his thought to his life, who takes seriously his institutional obligations, his personal obligations, and who walks among us as someone who sets the standard for what an ideal professor really is. So to be able to say that there is someone among us who has been here longer than the school itself is really not a chronological observation, but a qualitative observation of someone who grew up inside the university and who year after year, decade after decade, has helped define the meaning of the School of the International Service. So, my friend Aziz, I salute you. We all salute you. We are here to say thank you for your many years of service. I am here to say thank you for what I regard as a very special group of alums, of people who have fed in various ways and been nurtured by people like Professor Said and others who make up the School of International Service as a unique leader, not only on our campus as a school, among our colleges, but as the largest, and in my estimation and many others, the absolute unrivaled best School of International Service. Thank you for being here.
Faculty member that needs no introduction to this crowd. Just like Ben, I go around the university, I meet new alumni, I travel to distant cities, and I'm always asked, do I know Abdul Aziz Said? And I'm almost always regaled with some story about what happened in the first class that the student had in the university that Abdul Aziz taught. And with a lot of faculty, you know, they teach off of yellowed notes, and you hear the same story year after year. I never hear the same story about Abdul Aziz Said. And just today, Nancy Hartwell, who is an alum from the 60s, who isn't able to be here tonight, sent me an email about her story. And you'll have to tell me if this is true, Abdul Aziz. She said, for homework, one time Dr. Said gave us an assignment that really threw us for a loop. Make a chart listing all the independent countries of Africa, their area, capital, and name of the head of state. Now, in those days, before the internet, when these countries had, for the most part, only been independent for a couple of years, this was a really tough job. How did he ever expect us to be able to dig up all of that in just a couple of days? Be resourceful was all that Dr. Said would say, and that was maddening to all of us. But then somebody noticed a chart on the wall of a little classroom building way over in an out-of-the-way corner of the campus that, surprise, had exactly that information on it. The problem was that the door of the building was locked, and it seemed to be permanently locked. But a window in the back was partway open. So word got out, and before long, all of us in the class were sneaking over to that building, climbing through the window, and copying down the chart. And the word of the day was, don't close the expletive-deleted window. So the following class, we were all sitting there looking smug as could be, and Dr. Said took one look at us after reading our assignments and burst out laughing. He said, you found it. He said, good, you were all resourceful. Is that a true story, Abdul Aziz? It's amazing. It's really amazing. All the different stories one hears about how, pardon me? It's just amazing to me. I mean, I remember, it's amazing to me how memorable Abdul Aziz Said is for all of the students who have come through the university, especially those who took courses with him, or even those that didn't. And he's, of course, memorable to all of us on the faculty. When I came to the School of International Service 12 years ago, on my desk, on the table in my office, was a bowl of flowers. And I had no idea where it came from. I asked my secretary, what was that from? And she said, it's a gift from Dr. Said. I said, oh. And I looked out my window, and there was Dr. Said sitting on the bench outside the building, sitting there, and I watched students come by and talk with him. So my first day as dean, I was just learning the ropes. I went out and talked with Dr. Said. And it was the first of many conversations that we've had. And that was a wonderful conversation. He knew how to make it memorable. The flowers really made it memorable as a symbol. And it's been a pleasure to work with him these past 12 years, trying to implement the things that Abdul Aziz tries to do. He really tries to stretch the envelope. I think you all know it from your classrooms. This Peace and Conflict Resolution program that Dr. Ladner mentioned is the fastest growing new program in our school. People throughout our association, the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs, talk about the new international relations now that the Cold War has ended. They talk about developing curricula so we can learn what we can do through cooperation rather than conflict. Only one school has developed a degree program to offer a master's degree with that explicit orientation. Only one school has developed an undergraduate concentration that focuses on that. Other schools have a course or two. We have that degree program, we have that concentration, because not only was Abdul Aziz Said, not only did he have the imagination to think of it, he had the persistence to work together with all of his faculty to get them on board, and it wasn't something that happened instantaneously. It took quite a long time. So I salute him both for his imagination and for the hard work to turn that imagination into things that have been meaningful for all of us and continue to be. And in closing, I think that everyone in this room would also be interested to know that in the context of our 40th year, in the spring of the 40th year, we'll be working to establish an Abdul Aziz Said Fellowship for a deserving master's student, not only to provide funds to help a deserving master's student with a high cost of private education today, but something that will inspire that student because the fellowship will be in the name of Abdul Aziz Said. Good to be here with you.
SIS alums and the longest serving faculty member at American University, Professor Said has provided intellectual and spiritual guidance to thousands of AU students over the past 40 years. He is the founder and director of the International Peace and Conflict Resolution Program in the School of International Service and the first occupant of the Mohammed Said Farsi Chair of Islamic Peace. Dr. Said is the author of dozens of books, including the recently released 4th edition of Concepts of International Relations in Global Perspective, and is a frequent participant and lecturer to national and international organizations dedicated to the advancement of peace. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Abdul Aziz Said.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, thank you. Yes, yes, yes. Let me first express my gratitude to Ed Robinson, my teacher. Ed, would you stand up, please? Yes, Ed. Thank you for coming. The first student I had is here, dating back to 1956. Elaine Smith. Elaine. Last semester, last year, I had a freshman course, Introduction to World Politics. I had not given that course for many, many years. A student came the first day of class, and she said to me, Mr. Said, I am third generation. My grandfather, when he was an officer in the Navy, came from Vietnam, and he took courses here with you. My father came here, and I am here. So I think, Ben, I may qualify for the book of records. Standing before you, past, present, and future appear like one. They are merging together. yes, this is a good time to pay our debt to the past. We don't have time to do what we used to do with Lou Simmons and Rich Frankel and Hal Lipman and Eddie Feinberg and Hal Lipman I mentioned, Mario Legalski. They were teaching fellows with me. Going back, Eddie, 1969, 70? Yeah. You and Lou, yeah. Yeah. Going back to those days. Yeah, and I'm reminded as I stand here of that time too. So Blake comes to mind, because Eddie used to quote Blake all the time. Blake comes to mind, to see eternity in an hour. Yes. So past, present, and future appear like one. Yes. I'm uncertain if I have been able to change any one of you when you were in the university. But I'm certain that I have changed. I have changed. I have changed over the years. And the more I live, the more I travel, the more I write, the more I experience the revelations of the day, the more I laugh, the more I love. The story never changes. I'm learning gradually to be a beginner. My eyes get wider because what I see before me is magnificent. But I won't say to you at the outset, I am doing what I came to this earth to do. My home, American University, have given me that opportunity. I'm doing what I came here to do. But equally important, I'm doing what I love to do. It all began, we are celebrating the School of International Service. Our school began with a story. It's a story about a person who was visiting a quarry, entered the quarry and came to the first person working with stones and inquired, "What are you doing?" And the person said, "I'm making a living." Then walked to another person doing the identical thing and inquired, "What are you doing?" And the person said, "I'm dressing stones." Walked to another person doing the exact same thing and inquired, "What are you doing?" And the person said, "I'm building cathedrals." Because that person saw the context, that person knew the importance of making a living, learned the technique of dressing stones, but was able to see beyond. That is Ernest Stacey Griffith. That's Ernest Griffith. He was a cathedral builder. He understood that the purpose of knowledge is to make passageways between the mind and the heart. He understood that. He understood that the heart defines our purpose and the mind lends the energy to achieve that purpose. For Griffith, learning was a journey. He was a mountain climber, and he thought like a mountain. He was a gardener, and look at us here. Look at this magnificent garden. Ernest Griffith gathered a roster of distinguished faculty. As I am talking now, I see their photographs, their portraits. I see their faces. Some left us. Some have retired. But all of them made vibrant contributions to who we are. Let me name some. Seymour Beersley, Mary Bradshaw, Richard Butwell, Wendell Cleland, Ted Columbus, Harold Davis, my God, Harold Davis. Harold Davis, yeah. Bill Elliott, Gunther Ike. Is Gunther here? He's still with us. I'm sorry I missed him. He has been here as long as I know. Tom Farrer, John Finan, Big John. Charlie Lodge used to call him Big John. Esther Franklin, Ralph Gabriel, yes, Charles Heimsoff, Loy Henderson, Edmund Hollander, Dave Hawley, Alfred Hoskins, Harry Howard, Lou Howell, Warren Hansberger. Is Warren here tonight? He's still with us. Warren has retired. I think they did mention it earlier. Yes. Marian Irish. Yeah, you guys remember those of you from the old days. Marian Irish, American foreign policy. Whittle Johnston, my God, Whittle. Yeah, liberal theories of international relations. Phil Kaiser, our labor program. Ken Landon, Southeast Asia program. Charles Lurch, one of our deans. A beloved soul. Lord Michael Lindsay, Charles McLaughlin, Emmett Mittelbeater, Albert Malt. I missed Al, he left. He was here earlier. Al Malt. Remember Al Malt, Eddie? Yeah. Western tradition, my God. You guys used to complain so much about Jim Waller. Al Malt, yeah. Bill Olson, where is Bill here tonight? Our dean, one of our distinguished members of the faculty. Nick Orner, Oliver Peterson, Jackson Piotro, one of our deans too. Pittman Parker was chair of the Department of International Relations until the school began, before the school. And we owe him a great deal of credit for laying foundations for international relations. Darrell Randall, I don't see Darrell Randall, but he's one of our greats too. Elspeth Rastow, Durwa Sandifer, Sam Sharp, my God. Fruji, are you here? Yeah, Sam Sharp. Who would forget Sam Sharp? Astrid Sulky, Alan Taylor, and his maps. He was always worried about his maps. He would come to one after the other. Where are my maps? Where are my maps? Yes. Buell Trowbridge, you remember Buell Trowbridge? He and Sam Sharp, the fights they used to have. Yes. Brady Tyson, Richard Van Wagenen also became dean of the graduate school. Absalom Vilakasi, Larry Wadsworth, oh my God, Larry, God bless him. God. Larry with Sam and Mary Bradshaw, who were the earlier faculty members. Larman Wilson, Gregory Wolf, another one of our dean. Jim Weaver, now Jim Weaver you may say, School of International, but Jim, we consider you in the School of International Service. Yes. Glenn Wood and Takehiko Yoshihashi. only few. So that's the faculty, some of the faculty. Our enterprise as a school was made possible by our staff, other than the faculty staff. And my God, Bill, do you guys remember Mrs. McDonald? Esther McDonald? Am I the only person remembering? You remember? the first secretary. Yes. I never forget. Yeah, I remember Joyce Bouvier. Munawar Mustafa, you remember? She was, I think, your secretary for a while. Yeah. Linda Wharton, Anne Ansley, and many, many others. Our life was made comfortable by the custodial staff. And who would forget Paul Bullock and Bob? My God, who would forget them? Who would forget them during the 60s? But having said all of that, Ernest Griffith attracted you. You who are here, our alumni. You are the raw material of who we are. You are who we are all about. That's it. That's who we are. Some of you are generals. Some of you are admirals. Some of you are ambassadors. Some of you are cabinet ministers. Some of you are bankers. Some of you are professors. Some of you are lawyers. Some of you are in every walk of life. I would like to just clap for the alumni. Let me take a few minutes and focus upon 2 or 3 areas. One, how has our business changed since you left us? International relations. Much has changed, and much remains the same. No question about that. What someone like myself is learning, and I'm trying to go into another revision of concepts of international politics. As I mentioned in our retreat, the School of International Service retreat, there was a time when we in international nations knew all the answers. We would debate whose answers were right. We are now discovering that while there is no consensus on answers, that it's exactly the questions that define our business. That's where we are, identifying questions. We are beginning to understand that in looking at questions, these questions, at least to me, appear in 3 categories. Questions about the person, questions about the world, and questions about our field. Questions about the person. See, it didn't occur to us years ago to look at that question. In my training as a political scientist, I was trained to look at international politics top down, not bottom up. Now we are beginning to understand that one of the essential questions we want to ask is about the person. We are asking questions about human nature. We are beginning to discover that depending on how we view human nature, pretty much determines how we approach the field. If we view human nature as aggressive, then security is a real problem. If we view human nature as capable of change, then we look at ways and means, international law, international organization. Another question we are asking about the person, what do people need from their world? What do they need from their world? Opinions converge. There is some agreement on physical necessities, but we are beginning to understand that while much has changed in international relations on the level of the subjective situation, equally important changes are occurring on the level of the subjective situation. By that I mean on the level of how people view themselves, on the level of values. We are beginning to understand that the frame of reference is changing. A third question, what is identity and what forces shape identity? We are going to look at that more seriously than before. Identity, what is it? What are the forces that shape it? A fourth question about the person that we are asking, why are we here? Why are we here? That's an important question that those of us in the business are looking at. So one set of questions deal with the person, another set of questions deals with the world. And here one question I'm wrestling with, together with many others, has to do with how is the world organized? Who is in control? Through what means? How are resources distributed? Whose power and influence is increasing? Whose is declining and why? Who defines the issues on the global political agenda and how? Another question about the world, are most people getting what they need from the world as it is currently organized? Are they? Questions that we need to ask. If it's legitimate to apply the utilitarian principle of the greatest good for the greatest number to other social institutions, why not to world order as a whole? At least 1/5 of the planet suffers from tremendous poverty. The industrial north has one perception of that. There are many other perceptions. A third question, can conflict be reduced and cooperation increased? That's an important question. It tells us about whether or not we should strengthen the development of other than national institutions. A fourth question about the world, is the pattern of world order changing? If so, how? Yes, it is. It is. Nationalism today is undermining the authority from the bottom, and globalization is undermining the nationality of the state from the top. It's changing. How do we deal with it? A fifth question about the world, can we have both material prosperity and ecological balance? Jim Weaver has answered that question. He tells me, yes, of course. Ecology and economy, they go hand in hand. The third category of questions has to do with the field. Has to do with the field. What is international relations about as we enter the 21st century? Well, in the old days, we defined it as the sum total of everything which specialists in international relations study. That's how we define it. But with the tremendous changes, what happens? The second question about the field, what is the relation between international politics and international economics? Wealth, on the one hand, is an instrument to augment political power. On the other hand, political power is one of the many tools to promote interests of nations. How do we study that? A third question about our business. Who or what participates in international relations and in what ways? Nation states, terrorists, multinational corporations, non-government organizations. So the question becomes, Does international relation then dissolve into everything and everybody? It's an important question. Lou Goodman has answered that. He has gathered a great multidisciplinary faculty, looking at many things. When you look at the School of International Service, we have programs on international development. We have programs on international cooperation. We have programs on international communication, you name it, economic policies. Another question about our business. Are we entering an era of a post-international politics? Yes, we are. We are. We have moved from a humanity that experienced itself as fragments of the whole into a new context of humanity as a whole. How do we do that? How do we deal with that? In the old days, we spoke about penetration of nations, domestic foreign policy, but it doesn't make sense anymore. Finally, let me come to my last point. What am I learning? What am I learning? Probably a couple of things. I'm still learning them. Foremost, that the issues facing us demand a new set of answers, arising from a new set, that they demand a new set of answers deriving from a new pattern of faith and belief. For me, what appears to me, this pattern of faith and belief is spiritual in nature. I prefer the term spiritual over religious. And for me, spiritual over religious is important personally. For me, spiritual emanates from the person. And the best description I have read about spiritual is one by the Scottish Council of Churches in 1977. Growing in sensitivity to self, to others, to non-human, to God, to that which lies beyond, to the whole. It starts from the individual. As we enter the 21st century, I'm beginning to understand that the whole is reflected in the parts, and from the parts, we gather the knowledge to reconstruct an ever-changing whole. For me, it is becoming clear that the whole world needs the whole world. That what first, second, and third world, or industrial north and global south, what they have in common, they are world. What the oppressor and the oppressed have in common, they are both people, suffering the vicissitudes of life. Yes. What civilization and barbarism have in common, they are both culture. What reason and intuition have in common, they are both foundations of knowledge. Ben Ladner is a great historian, among other things. He understood when he came here a secret that not too many people know, that the School of International Service is a school that created a university. And let me tell you what I mean by that. 100 years ago, 1997, September, the 6th issue of the University Courier had a story a proposal to establish the College of the Science of Government for teaching in diplomacy and international law. And in 1920, the Graduate School of Diplomacy and Jurisprudence was established. So we are a school. President Ladner, his vision of the global university is indeed what this university, what this enterprise has been all about. And Lou Goodman, as our dean, continues to provide the leadership. And sometimes he complains to me. He tells me, Abdul Aziz, you are unorthodox. I react to Lou, I say, Lou, I am unorthodox, but I am ecumenical in my unorthodoxy. I'm sorry we are also missing our provost, Neil Kerwin, who is one of the great assets in this university. For me, this is my home. It's my home. Let me remind myself again, I'm here to do what I have come to do. But I also have learned that a person cannot achieve anything alone. At least I haven't. And I see you here, the women and men who have helped me walk, talk, and achieve what I have achieved. We cannot achieve anything alone. We really can't. And I see many of the faces here. But also, as we are here, I want to also express my gratitude for those who do not enjoy the privilege that we have, who cannot be here, who cannot go to schools and universities. I began by saying, this is a good time to remember the past. Where do we go from here? We have our dean, who has, since he has come to SIS, not only has he shaken the foundation of the school literally and figuratively, but he has raised the roof, also literally and figuratively. And President Ladner, where do we go from here? President Ladner gave us the vision of the global university, the great university. So I say to you, as you heard President Ladner, Dean Goodman, Tom, and others praise me, at best, on good days, I'm only a mirror to reflect who you are. On good days. If what you see in me is clear, it's because on good days I'm able to do that. So I want to thank you for that. And I will never forget how much mischief Eddie Feinberg created. He got me in lots of trouble when he was my teaching fellow. Simmons. I mean, this guy used to get me in one. These stories you heard about me, most of them, they did it. Never do it behind my back. Richard Franklin, my God, Valeria against me. And they will do stuff, then they will come and I hear about them, okay? Thank you.
Said. The professor raised many questions when he began his talk tonight. For those of us who still may question why we sought degrees in international relations, I believe Professor Said helped to answer that one. I do want to present something to Dr. Said tonight. A book has been prepared for him, and it is a book of photos and various testimonials. I understand the book can entertain many more photos and testimonials from all of you. And it's a tribute to Professor Said's distinguished tenure here at American University. Professor? That concludes our program. Thank you all very much for coming. See you next year.